What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today we're going to go over the Burning Arrow Elementalist build that I'm using in 3.14 Ultimatum League. This build is a really strong all-arounder, and when I say all-arounder, I mean it could easily clear any of the bosses. It's going to need more investment to probably kill Maven and Uber Elder and the Feared, but by how much I've invested so far into the build and how well it's able to destroy Cyrus and other things, I feel like this build will be able to do any of those. It's not a top tier bossing, but it's an all-arounder where you're capable of doing those boss fights while maintaining really good clear speeds through maps. So like T16 maps are really easy, you clear them in a breeze, and it's really a great build to use in Ultimatum because you're going to want something that will clear really fast, but you're going to have to kill those big HP enemies that spawn as the rounds go on. So this is a really strong build, and I highly suggest you guys trying out if you really like to set the world on fire and watch Ignite Prolif do its thing and just set everything on fire and clear for you. There are two major drawbacks to this build. One is that it's pretty squishy. We have a low health pool and low ES pool. We're a health based build because of Xop's Nurture recovery mechanic that we'll get into later on. But overall, we're pretty squishy. We do have Primal Aegis. We can't be elemental ailment affected, so we're immune to it. But we don't have crazy overlapping defensive mechanics that other builds do. We're not overcapped on res or anything. So it is on the squishier side overall, but I do think this build with a little bit of investment in the gear can get to a point where you don't feel that squishy. I don't find myself dying that often on T15, 16 maps, even at a lower to medium budget of what this build is. And the other drawback is that it's pretty unique dependent. There's a lot of uniques in this build, a lot more than I'm usually suggesting you guys use, but a lot of these uniques are fairly strong. Some of them are very expensive, some of them are very cheap. The cluster jewels are pretty expensive, at least for Ultimatum League, but there's a lot this build can do with those. There's a lot of build enabling uniques on this, and allows us to clear really fast as well as boost our DPS exponentially. So I highly suggest trying out this build, maybe not as a league starter. You definitely can do this as a league starter. You won't be clearing at its full potential until you got a few of the mandatory uniques on this build, specifically Xop's Nurture and all the golems that you can possibly fit in this build, because the more golems you have, the more damage and buffs you're going to get. So there's a lot of things in this build that we're going to go over, and I hope you guys enjoy. Now we're going to be getting into the gearing section. So the gear is going to be pretty important. I'm going to go over the mandatory uniques first. Some of these can be pretty pricey depending on the league, and I'm going to be telling you guys if it's expensive or not, or for the league I'm purchasing these in. So the first we're going to go over is the bow. The bow is the most important item. Use this as soon as possible. Xop's Nurture is pretty much a 7-link because we get Ignite Proliferation, and then we get some good damage from it. On top of that, we get Recover Life when you ignite an enemy, and this is really useful because we hit a massive amount of enemies. GMP with our Burning Arrow, we ignite tons of enemies, so we just instantly get that life back, and its recovery is pretty instant. So this is a really good defensive as well as offensive bow. Get this on a 6-link as soon as possible. I'm still working on a 5-link, but as a 5-link, this is really strong bow. The next most important, I would say, is the Primordial Chain. Primordial Chain is a pretty expensive amulet, but it does give us +3 to golems. The +3 to golems is very, very strong. It gives us a ton of buffs. It stacks with our Elementalist, so when we get more golems, that buff just gets higher and higher. So In the end, you get a total of 9 golems, so 9 times whatever the Ascendency says is a lot of damage. The next thing we're going to be going over is the Ascendency's chant. Sorry for mispronouncing it, but Ascendency's chant is really strong. Its main line we care about is socketed spell. Trigger socketed spell when you attack with a bow. So basically, when we attack, we're going to cast whatever is linked inside the helmet. So we have Flame Wall, Wave of Conviction, Combustion, and Flammability. So whenever we attack, Flame Wall, then Wave of Conviction, and then Flammability, and it's going to alternate as we continue casting. So it just makes all of the utility skills that we're using just automatic, and it's really good for clearing. There are other helmets that are better for just solid DPS. Go ahead and read the form guide if you are interested in that, but in this version of the build, Ascendency's chant is my favorite choice. Next, actually I would value this more important than the other two, sorry about that, but Barracks Respite is probably the second most important unique. Sorry for going out of order, but the line that reads, when you kill an ignited enemy, you inflict equivalent ignite on each nearby enemy. This is insanely strong because this allows us to not only have ignite proliferation from our bow, but the enemies that we don't immediately hit and allow those enemies to prolive, when we kill them, their dead bodies sit there for a bit and just ignite enemies that are nearby. So this just makes clearing just insanely fast, and I highly suggest getting this ASAP. You can equip it at level 20, so if you have the currency at level 20 for whatever reason, if this is not your league start or whatever, this ring slot is probably the best ring slot. Alternative to this ring is the replica Emberwick. I know that's more expensive, but it does give more DPS, so if you're looking to boss better, do that ring, but this ring I feel like fits my playstyle way better. Next, we're going to go over the Diadem Dawn. This is a belt that gives us ignites you inflict with attacks deal damage faster, so just more damage. This also gives us life and resistance, so it's a pretty well-rounded belt overall. Next, I'm going to go over the quiver. What the quiver we're looking for is damage over time multiplier, life, resistance, dex if you need it, or physical damage, fire damage. Those are the things you're looking for in a quiver. On top of that, you want it to be a penetrating quiver, so you can arrows pierce an additional target. It's pretty useful because it allows us to make clearing with our burning arrow pretty clean, because we can hit more enemies, we can ignite more enemies. Next, on our gloves, you're going to just pretty much want the mod. It's an incursion mod, so you get it from Alva in the temple. Fire damage against burning enemies, so enemies are always burning if they're ignited, so therefore it's just free added damage. On top of that, you're going to want life, resistance. Energy shield is not as important because we're not scaling it. Dexterity, and those are the main things you're going to be wanting on your gloves. You could actually get an enchant that allows you to pierce an additional target as a craft on the bench, so that is also really good to have on your gloves. Next, on our boots, you pretty much just want movement speed, resistance, life, and dexterity if you need it. The dexterity if you need it is pretty much on any piece of gear and jewel in this build. On top of that, you can get a hunter influence boots to get the mod. Damage you deal is faster with ignites or whatever. It's pretty much this mod on the belt, but you can get it on your boots at a lesser value, and it's from the hunter influence, so that is very strong to get on your build for extra damage, but I would prioritize movement speed, life, and resistance over that. Lastly, we got our rare ring. I pretty much prioritize just pretty much resistance and dexterity and got life on it. You can get wed or increased elemental damage with attack skills. That's a big DPS increase. Oh, and on top of that, sorry, I forgot to mention on your quiver, you want wed. You want increased elemental damage with attack skills on your quiver as well if you can. That's a big DPS increase because you can get a higher roll on your quiver. Lastly, we'll go over the flasks. Our damaging flasks are going to be Aziri's Promise and the Taste of Hate. because these both give us physical is extra cold and physical is extra chaos. And since any damage can ignite, scaling any physical is extra anything just gives us more ignite DPS. So that's scaling our damage. On top of that, elemental damage is extra chaos. So this is kind of double dipping. Azir's Promise is pretty nutty for this build. The next flask is the Cinder Swallow. This isn't mandatory if you can't buy one, because these are usually pretty expensive. Don't worry about it. But this just gives us insane life, mana, and ES recovery. And a little bit of damage. Next is the Quicksilver Flask. We have two magic flasks, the Quicksilver and the Quartz. You can also use a Basalt Flask if you want to instead. And we're going to want Corrupted Blood and Bleed Immune and Curse Immune on both of the flasks. Since we are Elemental Ailment Immune, we do not need Freeze, Shock, or Burning on any of our flasks. Another thing you can get is Poison Immune. It's pretty helpful, but I opt for Curse and Bleed Immune. And that's pretty much it for the items. Next, we're going to be going over the gem links section of this build. Some of them are tied to specific gear pieces, and I'm going to be going over that for you guys. Now, on our 6th link, our main 6th link is our damaging or burning arrow. So you're going to want burning arrow. Vol burning arrow is also a really good choice. It's pretty fun. It's not as mandatory as other builds, but I suggest trying it out, see if you feel like you need it. I really don't feel like I need it. I would rather have a level 21 burning arrow than a level 20 Vol burning arrow for the trade-off. So take that as you will. Next links are going to be deadly ailments, unbound ailments, burning damage, greater multiple projectiles, and elemental damage with attack support. These are going to be our links to our burning arrow. Now, if you are fighting a boss, you're going to take out greater multiple projectiles and sock it in a Swift Affliction. This will make us cast just one arrow, but our damage will go up a ton. You can use Swift Affliction as in the space of any one of these slots if you really feel like it, but I feel like the other links are more important than Swift Affliction in my opinion. The next links we're going to be going over is the links in the Ascendency chant. This is important because this is when we use a bow skill, this is what it's going to cast. We're going to have Flame Wall, Flammability, Combustion, and Wave of Conviction. Kind of self-explanatory, just fire exposure, Curse. Flame Wall just gives us more damage with our fire skills, and Combustion makes it so they get reduced resistance when we hit it with any of these. So our Wave of Conviction or our Flame Wall are going to be hitting pretty often, so that's why we have it on our helmet. The next setup I'm going to go over is actually one of my favorite setups and was one of the convincing factors for me using this build this league. Cast when damage taken, Ball Lightning, greater multiple projectiles. This is a 3-link. You can ignore the 4th slot in here. I'm using it just to have a flame dash. Now, this setup is really cool because when you take damage, you're going to cast Ball Lightning out of yourself. And if you're low HP, thanks to Xoph's Nurture, you're instantly going to go full health right away as long as those Ball Lightnings are touching things. So if you're in an ultimatum and you get hit and you're like about to die, Ball Lightnings will come out and you'll instantly be max life and just regenerating that max life as long as you're getting hit. This is a really strong mechanic. It's stronger than Steel Skin, stronger than Immortal Call in my opinion, and I highly suggest if you're using Xoph's Nurture, make sure you're using the cast when damage taken Ball Lightning setup. It is very, very strong. The next links I'm going to go over is our auras. We have Anger, Clarity, Malevolence, and Enlighten. Now, you're going to use Precision instead of Clarity. And that is only when you are capped on your chance to hit. Where's my actual burning arrow? There it is. When your chance to hit. Now my evasive monsters isn't capped, and this can be bad. I'd say this number is way more important. I would like to be capped on this, so I may consider getting more accuracy in the future, which when I get more jewel slots I definitely will max this out. But as of the time being, I felt like clarity was a better fit because it allows me to make more casts, even though it looks like my mana is a lot lower. So this is without the clarity. I actually get more casts because of the mana regen, and that's just how clarity works. You can change this slot how you feel it should work. You can make clarity a lower level, take it out completely, put in precision, make it whatever level feels good, but you're going to want your chance to hit to be 100%. Now, I have an Enlighten level 3 in here to make it so I can have all these. Now, if you don't have an Enlighten, you're going to have Anger and Malevolence taking up 100% of your mana, and that's no good. So what I would suggest doing is instead using a Malevolence and taking off Anger, and you can use something like Herald of Ash and Precision, or Herald of Ash and Clarity, and that will take up a portion of your mana, but it won't eat up 100% of it. Until you get level 2 or level 3 Enlighten is when you're going to socket in your Anger, and then you could socket in other things as well. So keep that in mind. The next links we're going to get to is our golems. Now, I don't have them all linked together because the colors are kind of annoying, and I haven't spent that much time on this build. I'm currently leveling with this build a lot still. I'm only level 91, but I wanted to push this video as fast as possible to you guys so you guys can try this build out if you're interested. Now, the golems are Flame Golem, Stone Golem, Lightning Golem, Ice Golem, Chaos Golem, every single type of golem, as you can see on my bar. Now, we don't use Karen Golem because the buff we don't care about, because it just gives damage to minions or whatever, so we don't care about that. What we care about is the regen from the Stone Golem and the Chaos Golem, what's it called? The additional fizz damage reduction. Those two are the most important, so I summon more of these, because when they die, they get resummoned, which is a really cool feature now thanks to the Golemancer, I think is the Ascendency. But once they die, there's that 4-second phase where you're not getting their buff, so that's kind of unfortunate. So I put the most into the ones that I've deemed the most important. You can argue that Ice Golem's pretty important because it does give us a lot of accuracy, but you can distribute these however you like. This is my little setup that I have going on. And the last link is a solo link of just Flame Dash. That's our movement skill to hop over edges and whatnot. And that's pretty much it for the gem links. Alright, next I'm going to be going over the leveling tree, and I'm going to be doing this through Path of Building. This is because I have a few leveling trees that I'm going to be going over. So the leveling trees are dependent on what skill you're using. So my leveling tree is using Burning Arrow. You're going to be wanting using Burning Arrow as soon as possible, which is actually level 1, so in the beginning when you can. So getting Burning Arrow on a bow and just using it from there is really strong. It's not the most optimal way. There are far more superior skills to use while leveling, but I want to use my main skill as soon as possible. I'm that type of person. So if you want to follow that, follow my leveling trees. If not, really good leveling skills are Fireball and Armageddon brand with Flame Wall. Those will pretty much get you into maps with a really similar tree, and you're just going to be specking a few more spell damage than me. So what we're going to be I'm going to be showing you guys what you're going to rush. So basically you're going to want to rush Elemental Overload, Breath of Flames, and Holy Fire. Those are going to be your 3 first damage nodes. You can grab this. It just gives us fire res and fire damage. You can actually skip this if you really want to, but it's just a really good early node to grab just for some quick damage, because there's a lot of travel nodes between our next upgrades. Now the next area we're going to go is I'm going to be suggesting you guys to grab Divine Judgment. We don't go Penetration because Penetration does not affect Ignite. I heard this from multiple other players, so I'm believing them. So that's why we go with the top route. Then we're going to grab some life, come through here, get a little bit of damage, and then come through here and get more life. And then we're also going to be grabbing, by this time, by your second Ascendency, you're probably going to be getting Golem Commander, because you have your Golems. Only spec this once you have access to Golems. And then you're going to want to pick up Stone Golem, Chaos Golem, and Flame Golem, Ice Golem, kind of that order. And then lastly, for this part, you're going to want to grab Spiritual Aid. It's a lot of nodes, but it does give us some damage thanks to the minion damage here, the minion damage there. So just a direct damage increase on top of giving us a little bit of accuracy actually. So this is actually pretty useful. The next part, we're going to get this for accuracy and dexterity if you need it. If you don't need this, you can drop this little 3-noder. So it's up to you. I didn't want to click that. And then you're going to be grabbing Constitution, big life. You can grab as many pieces of this as you can. Then you're going to be grabbing Arsonist and Magmatic Strikes, can never say that word, for some big damage. On top of that, you're going to be filling out a little more life if you can, like spec these little nodes, spec that node. And then you're going to be getting ready to use Cluster Jewels. Use just mediums if you can, and just spec them into this spot, just a medium, a singular medium. It'll give you quite a bit of damage. And while you are working to build up medium Cluster Jewels or your large Cluster Jewels, just work on filling out life right here. You can fill out extra life there. Here if you haven't. There's quite a few areas, and by that time, once you hit a little bit of end game, I would say around Act 7, you could actually grab Sovereignty, so you can spec in some more auras. This is dependent on what you're fitting in. You could have different things like Herald of Ash. Herald of Ash Malevolence Precision is actually really good while leveling, so use that, and you can spec all those if you spec into Sovereignty. And then lastly, we just go over our Cluster Jewels. Our main thing is Primordial Bond. This gives us buffs for our golems. And then our main damage, the main reason we use Cluster Jewels are the mediums for Blowback and Cooked Alive, the main two. The most important two, because it just reduced fire res on enemies and then inflict damage faster. So we just double up on those. Get as many as you can. If you can do 2 Cluster Jewels, great. If you can't, don't worry. And that's kind of it for just the passive points. I kind of included Cluster Jewels in that. Oh, there's a little trick, by the way, with Cluster Jewels. Now, if you had a 3 passive with Primordial Bond, the Primordial Bond would actually be up here. But if you have either Renewal, Raise and Pillage, or one other, and you only have 2, you can actually have Primordial Bond on the pathing areas, because if you have a third, Primordial Bond will be on the top, and that'll require you to spec these 2 nodes, which is just a waste of points. So do that if you can. Don't worry about it if you can't. These are kind of expensive, so 8 passive is what you're looking for, and minion damage. But Primordial Bond is the only thing we really care about on those. So we're going to be getting into more jewels. Our Cardum already went into them. The main jewels we're looking for, other than Cluster Jewels, is we'll get into it over here so I can see it better. Primordial Eminence. So grab 2 of these, and once you grab 2 of these, you can buy an Anima Stone. You can buy an Anima Stone, and you'll have 3 primordial items equipped. You'll be thinking, why only 2? That's because if we go to our amulet, the primordial chain actually counts as primordial, so you'll only need a primordial chain and 2 stones to count as the 3. So Anima Stone, kind of expensive. Don't worry about it. Get some Eminence if you can early on, if they're pretty cheap, because the buff effect is actually pretty useful. The next most expensive, or most important jewel, I should say, is actually, I think it's on this other tree, is Searching Eye Jewels. Searching Eye Jewels are really powerful for this build. Getting any kind of increased damage to attacks or bow attacks is just flat damage for us for ignites. Life is really important on this build because we can be pretty squishy, so get as much as you can. And accuracy is very strong. There's tons of other jewels you can use. I'll just quickly go over a few of them. Mantra of Flames just gives us a ton of extra damage. Transcendent Mind is very expensive of this league, but when per unallocated node, int node in our radius, you get damage over time multiplier, and you get quite a bit if you spec it into this top tree. That's why there's this ring. Another option is actually to use just rare jewels. I don't see any on me right now. Maybe I need to use the other tree. Rare jewels with, I don't have any on me, but rare jewels with life. Oh, Cobalt Jewel with life, burning damage, mana cost of skills, fire damage over time multiplier. Really good to have. Makes you tankier because you can get a lot of life if you start stacking quite a few of these. And lastly, as a another kind of flavor pick, you can actually use the split personality. It's pretty cheap, and you get increased effect per allocated passive between, and so you pick the furthest spot that's connected, so it goes all the way over here, so you would put it right here, and then you get increased accuracy and dexterity. The dexterity can be strength or int or whatever, but this gives us quite a bit of accuracy, so this is pretty helpful if you need it. But a hypnotic or a searching eye jewel will be more powerful than that jewel, but can be more expensive early on in the league. Now we're going to be getting into our leveling Ascendency order. Liege of Primordial is first because you get an extra golem, the auto resummon, pretty self-explanatory. Then 2 are pretty much rushing Elementalist because it gives us immune, an extra golem buff for the golem, and immune to ailments pretty much. So it just, once you get 3 of them, you're immune to elemental ailments. So this is very helpful for leveling and just a lot of extra flat damage that we can just scale. Then third, probably what makes this build important is Shaper Flames. I was considering opting this first, but you won't get the benefits of it that early. Yeah, we don't always ignite with Burning Arrow, but since we're speccing into Breath of Flames pretty early on, and we get a decent amount of ignite with combustion and everything together, we don't really need Shaper of Flames ASAP, but this does enable us to scale other types of damage, like lightning, so we could use Wrath or Hatred instead of Anger, and Wrath actually gives us more DPS in the end, but you can use what you want. And this does give us 25% more damage with ignites. What that line means is that if fire damage is your highest damage, you get 25% more damage. And if you look at our sheet, even if we use Wrath, like I'll spec Wrath in here really quick just to show you guys. So we'll put in a Wrath, take off Anger, and our calc's still looking really high in fire. Our lowest is almost 4 times more than the highest lightning and cold, so there's nothing really to worry about. So using Wrath actually does increase our DPS by a little bit, but I like using Anger because it's just kind of, I don't know, less of a headache. You can use Wrath. And then lastly, we're getting our Bastion of Elements, where we get our Primal Aegis, so we just makes this tanky, gives us elemental shield, and we cannot take reflected elemental damage, so that really helps in maps. So we can just pretty much do anything except for cannot regen maps, essentially. And we can actually avoid elemental ailments, like the map roll, but pretty annoying, so I usually roll over them. So regen and ailments are kind of the 2 I roll over. You can do both reflect. It's pretty great as a build, and it's pretty nice when you're early mapping, so you don't have to spend as much currency rerolling. As for the bandits, you're going to want to kill all. Killing all the bandits gives us 2 extra passive points. Alira doesn't really help us that much other than the resistance. We don't care about crit multi. And passive points are more important now more than ever, because cluster jewels give us so much damage. Having a few extra passive points will make us do a ton more damage than any of the bandits. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much. If you made it to this part, please leave a like and comment down below if you have any questions, concerns. or just want to chat and say how much money you made this league. Honestly, like whatever you want. I got a pretty slow league start. Unfortunately, I didn't get much currency in the first 2 weeks, so this build is kind of struggling to just like I'm struggling to max it out. So I'm building a lot of currency with this build. My league start build I didn't enjoy as much, or technically my league start I started it like 3 or 4 days in. That build kind of was not as fun for me, so I ended up making this build instead. I know Burning Arrow is pretty popular, but I did get a lot of inspiration from the PoE Ninja, the builds, the top builds. There's a lot of people playing this build. I'm sure there's a lot of other build guides and build forums you guys may have seen about this build, so I appreciate you guys watching this video, and hope you guys support my other content that I'm going to be pushing out. I hope to see you guys in the future video. Later.